Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Seaman Morrow and other third parties. If you prefer not to be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is Joe Alterman, a jazz and blues pianist whose latest album, Brisket for Breakfast, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Joe, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Joe, so tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a jazz pianist.
Yeah, well, so I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and for some reason, I don't know why, I asked my parents for piano lessons when I was 4 or 5. Didn't have musicians in the family, so I didn't hear piano music. So I don't know why I asked for the lessons, but I had a couple lessons. I didn't really like it, but and I wanted to quit, but my parents, honestly, they wouldn't let me. So I was from 3 or 4 to or 4 or 5 to 11 or 12. I was taking classical lessons and not loving it and often getting in trouble for changing notes. At that time, I didn't know there might be a music where you'd be encouraged to do that. And basically, growing up in Atlanta, my dad, he wasn't he isn't a musician, but he loves music. So he would take me around to mostly like bluegrass festivals. I loved seeing a lot of bluegrass. That was the music I first fell in love with. And so, but he was also he knew I had a talent for the piano. I just hadn't fallen in love with it yet. So he was introducing me to recordings of jazz pianists that he thought I might like eventually to try to make me fall back or in love with the piano. So, by the time he got to show me a recording of Oscar Peterson, it blended with the stuff I was hearing at a bluegrass festival because in this recording, Oscar Peterson was playing, an American traditional song, something that I would hear at a bluegrass festival. So it was really interesting to me. What really grabbed me was not the solos. It was initially, it was the way in which these jazz musicians or jazz pianists, especially, interpreted melodies that I was already familiar with. So that really grabbed me. But in terms of actually falling in love with the piano, um, at a bluegrass thing, I heard a song by a guitarist named Doc Watson. It's called Freight Train Boogie. I was just obsessed with this. It was a boogie woogie bass line. All I wanted to do was learn how to play it on the guitar. So made a deal with my parents that I could get guitar lessons as long as I did not quit my piano ones. And I started my guitar lessons, and my teacher, who coincidentally ended up becoming, I mean, he was always Oliver Wood, but the Wood Brothers, the band, really took off after we stopped, our lessons. But he made me realize pretty early on that boogie woogie music was written for the piano, and I've been taking piano for most of my life, and I had not been taking guitar for most of my life. So I should go back to the piano and try to, do this. So I did, and I just fell in love with it. So I had a classical recital one day, and I'm walking on I was 12, I think, maybe 13. I remember walking on stage and saying, "Screw it!" And I didn't play the piece I was supposed to play. I played a boogie woogie piece, and I got a standing ovation from the audience, and the school threw me out. And then I found a jazz teacher, and he kind of helped me find my path. So I never made a conscious choice like I want to be a It's just the music I always fell in love with, and that it really speaks to me. And so, I just love it. So that's how I was introduced to the music, and why I'm a pianist.
Your parents to take issue with you performing that boogie woogie piece at the classical recital?
Oh no, they were well, especially they didn't really care, honestly. But years later, they're very proud of me.
Let's listen to another track. This is Only Trust Your Heart.
One, two.
So the liner notes to for Brisket for breakfast introduce the album through a gastronomic lens, quote, looking for a good meal somewhere along the vast stretches of highways and byways crisscrossing America. Ask a musician, end quote. So what is the idea exactly behind this album, Brisket for Breakfast? And we'll take a look at the artwork right now.
Oh, yeah, no. So yeah. well, Houston person is from Florence, South Carolina. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And we first of all, one of the things we really bonded over is our love for food. And I mean, if we're on the road and if we're heading to a performance or just at the town where we're going to perform, we're usually on stage for an hour and a half, maybe 3 hours of the day, but most of the day is spent hanging out together at a restaurant, eating food. And, for Houston and I, jazz is fun, and people often forget or don't know how fun it is. It's often it's often seen as something where you need to, or people often think that they need to know a lot about the music before they can enjoy it. And we're just saying, this is fun. You don't have to know anything. If you like it, it's good. And we hope you like it. And, to me, I got into jazz here. And when my dad would put on some jazz at a barbecue, it just made everything feel elevated and feel better. So that's really our goal with this is, to reflect the love of the fun we like to have with each other on and off stage and hope that it kind of transmits to an audience because jazz is more fun than people act like it is these days.
Let's listen to Never Let Me Go. Tell us the story of meeting this amazing man, Houston person. You started out by telling us how you had this extraordinary moment where you're supposed to play a classical music piece and you play instead a boogie woogie piece at a classical concert. Tell us about meeting this man and your relationship.
Yeah, well, growing up, I mean, he was just one of the people I listened to and practiced along with constantly. I just love his sound. It's one of the first sounds once I started, once I fell in love with jazz that really brought me into the music even more. So I would just, I remember being like 15, 16, 17, and just playing along with his records and hoping that I could play with him, in person one day. And uh I never really thought it was going to be possible, but I was so lucky. I went to college at New York University, and he came in one night to do a master class. And Houston is has one of the sweetest sounds, one of the biggest sounds. Like it's just one of the yeah, one of the sweetest sounds ever. And he's known for playing the blues and or primarily known for playing the blues. And to a lot of the young students at the time, they hadn't realized how deep and how heavy of a thing the blues was. To them, the blues was, kind of easy, or they thought it was. And so they weren't particularly excited about Houston coming in because they were really into the more avant-garde stuff, while I was freaking out, so excited. And Houston came in the class, and I remember the first thing he said was, "Who wants to play some blues?" And a lot of kids stood up because they thought they're just going to get to show off and play a solo that is easy or whatever. So they all stood up. There's probably about 16 horn players, and they're all going to get a chance to take a solo. And Houston said, "How's the key of F?" Which is, one of the first keys you would typically learn to play the blues in. So everyone's saying, "Oh, that's great." And then Houston says, "Ready?" And he counts it off. He goes, "One, two," and it was the slowest blues I have ever heard. And the first guy couldn't get through the first three or four bars. And I mean, Houston just very quickly got the message across that the blues are not easy. And it worked. But so we met that day, and he gave me his card, and I called him, and I started to go to, I'd call him every few, once a week or something, and he'd tell me where he would be playing, and I'd always just go and hear him. And he'd end up, driving me home from, when he'd be on his way home, he'd give me a ride home, and we just started to get to know each other. And eventually he actually, I was amazed, but he came to my college to do my senior recital with me. He's just the greatest. And that's how we met, though. And it blossomed into what is now Brisket for breakfast.
Let's listen to this is That's All.
Can we in?
Yes.
This brings us to the philosophical part of our conversation, sharing the blues. is the title of the discussion. The blues, according to Apple's dictionary version 2.3, are a, quote, melancholic music of African American folk origin, typically in a 12-bar sequence. It developed in the rural South toward the end of the 19th century, finding a wider audience in the 1940s. As Black people migrated to the cities, this urban blues gave rise to rhythm and blues and rock and roll. End quote. Houston Person, who was born in Florence, South Carolina, and came of age in the 1940s, seems like an ideal musician with whom to make an album of blues standards. What did the blues mean to you before you met Houston Person that day at New York University? What do they mean to you today?
Yeah, well, the blues, that's a pretty heavy topic, but I think I'll never forget there's a great pianist named Randy Weston, and he was talking about what's unique about the blues compared to any other genre of music. And I remember he said, there's no other genre of music that can say, I love my baby, but my baby don't love me. And I love that. But the blues, and I agree. I mean, it the thing about the blues is it's the problem and it's the cure. How do you get over the blues? You play the blues. You know, Louis Armstrong said about the blues, it hurts so good. So it's hard to. I mean, I understand that you got to be able to put a definition of the blues in the dictionary that kind of says it, but it leaves so much else out that really can only be explained in the music, I think. But more than that, I feel like um, the thing about the people who play the blues is the more they live life, the better they get at playing the blues. And so, um, it's not the fact that Houston's black, that and he's from South Carolina, that he, I mean, that definitely, you know, introduced him to the blues, but it's the fact that Houston is 90 and still playing he's lived such a rich life. And you hear all that in his music, which has a lot of blues in it. Um, but the blues are so unique. They're so uniquely really like American, but they're expressing a feeling that everyone in the world feels. So I feel like, I mean, I don't, the blues are, yeah, it's such a deep and important part of music, and I don't know how. I mean, I'm just so glad they came along. The music came along because I don't know how people, who wanted to say I love my baby, but my baby don't love me, how they expressed that beforehand musically. So it just opened up the whole world, and it's such a unique genre of music for sure.
If today you were teaching that master class at New York University, what would you tell those students?
Well, I would we would listen to some blues, I think. I think we would listen to someone like Ray Charles and just hear how it doesn't sound old. It just sounds good. I mean, Duke Ellington said there's two kinds of music, good and bad. And I think it's worth hearing how how heavy, not I keep saying the word heavy, but I mean really like it's a deep thing, how deep the blues are and how timeless they are. And hearing someone like Ray Charles play a slow blues um is very eye-opening into how difficult that is. So I'd do something very similar to what Houston did. I think he did it perfect.
Let's listen to our final selection for the evening. This is "You Are My Sunshine." Before we get into the final thoughts of the evening, are there any questions? Are there any comments? Flaws? Yes, Dr. Davis.
Good. Now you can hear me, I think.
We can.
Great music, Joe. I think it was fantastic. I thought you
Oh,
were
thank you.
I thought you were from Brooklyn originally, but I guess I was wrong.
Hey, well, I'll take it. Whatever works. Thanks so
I
much
like
for
your
listening.
I like your style, I like your playing, and I like the story you gave at the beginning when you went on stage and at a recital for classical music and played jazz. I never had the guts to do that, but thank God you did.
Oh, well, thank you. That really means a lot. Yeah, they're still pissed about it.
I'm sure they are.
Thanks,
Thanks again.
Thanks, Dr.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks, Simeon. Thanks.
Final question, Joe, what do you wish all of us
Yeah.
when we listen to this album?
Well, I don't want you all to go get brisket and for breakfast. I just want you to enjoy it. I just hope it makes you smile. And our goal, Houston and I have recorded a lot of music over the past few years, and we specifically picked this stuff because we thought we could tell that we were having the most fun and the audience was having the most fun. So that's why we picked these songs. So we just hope you have fun too.
Okay. So in order to buy the album, it's easy enough, or stay in touch with Joe. Just go to joealtermanmusic.com. And Joe, so we just go to the shop here if we want to buy the album, is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. There it is. You can just click on Brisket for Breakfast. You can listen to it. You Are My Sunshine. There's the hit right there. And you can buy it for just $10 US dollars, buy the compact disc. And Joe, and if we want to reach out to you, we can just click on contact and
Exactly.
write you an
Yeah.
email.
Totally. Yeah.
Perfect. So feel free to reach out to Joe at joe.alterman@gmail.com with any of your questions or comments. Thank you so very much to
Yeah.
Joe Alterman.
Hey, thank you.
So let's see what's coming up on Vienna Live next week. All information is always available at www.simeonmore.com. And while you're at it, you can sign up for the Friday greeting that I send out to everybody. Just put your email in there and click yes, I want email updates from Vienna Live. So next Wednesday, we have Shuffle Demons. Are You Really Real? From Ontario, Canada. Canada's legendary jazz group Shuffle Demons celebrate their 40th anniversary with Are You Really Real, an electrifying new album that showcases their unique and unmistakable sound. The release highlights their trademark fusion of jazz, funk, blues, and rap with finely crafted compositions from all five band members. Let's get to know the groove of Toronto jazz. That's again Shuffle Demons next Wednesday. Are You Really Real? Once again, as always, all information about upcoming shows is available at www.simeonmoro.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Joe Alterman. Thank you to Vienna Live sponsors Victoria and Frederick Mulligan. Thank you to Abby Moser, Allison Hull, Agnieszka and Benoit Rivole, and Mary Schlesinger for the support of this show. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile from Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, Georgia. Goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Hey, bye.